Na me priya, I don't favor anyone. So Krishna reciprocates that je bhajanti tu mang bhaktya. However, those who worship me with devotion, mai te, they are in me, te chapyaham, and I am in them. So Krishna perfectly reciprocates. He says, je jata mam prapadyante. As people surrender to me, or as they approach me, actually, then je jata mang prapadyante, tangs tataiva. Tata means similarly or like that, tata, but when you add the word eva, tata eva, it actually makes it stronger. It means exactly like that. So Krishna said, and interesting, when Krishna says, I reciprocate, the word he uses in Sanskrit, bhajami. I worship them, but bhaj, the root bhaj, bhajami, means not only to worship, it means to accept something, to accept someone, to give yourself to someone in a particular way. For example, a typical wedding proposal, the way like kings often pop the question, wedding proposals in Sanskrit, you'll find as they say, for example, they'll say to the lady, the fair maiden, Bhajaswa mang bhajantang tvam, which means accept me as I am accepting you. And so the word they use for accept is bhaj. It's the same verse, that bhajaswa. So bhaj, anyway, we could go on for an hour about this verb. But so Krishna says, I accept people. And also, actually, the root meaning of bhaj is to share, like to share yourself with someone, to give yourself to someone. In that sense, to worship. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna uses this word vibhaga from the same root, bhaga, which means like divisions, like categorically. So it means to share, to give yourself to someone. And so Krishna is actually saying in the Bhagavad Gita that and the word prapadyate that Krishna uses is, of course, the verb pad, which means to go, and from which you get the word pada, the foot, because the foot goes. So the verb is pad, to go, and then pra, which in Sanskrit is something like forth, to go forth. So prapadyate literally means to approach. To approach. And as Prabhupada always said, just as if you approach the sun, you become fire. If you don't want to become fire, you better take another road. But if you approach the sun, you become fire. So if you approach Krishna, you could say, okay, I can do that. I can just walk up to Krishna, but you can't. Because when we approach Krishna, all of our false ego starts to burn off. And if we are attached to our false ego, we turn back. Like, whoa, that's not what I wasn't looking for that. I remember so many people in the early days, they would leave the movement because someone offended them or insulted them. And it's like, I used to think, I guess what they're saying is, I didn't join the Hare Krishna movement to become humbled. Really? And why did you join the Hare Krishna movement? So, as we approach Krishna, we become Krishnized. And so the extent to which I'm attached to whatever, I'm attached to my body, I'm attached to being the center of everything, because everyone, you can be a devotee and still in your own mind internally you live in your own little world in which you're the center of that world. I always say that there's philosophical atheism and there's psychological atheism. Philosophical atheism means, my official position is I think there's no God. Which philosophically is kind of really a dumb position, because if there's no God, then no one knows everything, because no one's omniscient. If no one knows everything, no one knows if there's a God or not. So atheism is it's not the best philosophy. But anyway, philosophical atheism means that someone just says, I don't believe in God. Psychological atheism means that even though I believe in God, let's say mentally, but in my practical life, my conscious psychological life, I'm self-centered. Or I see myself as the enjoyer. Actually, Krishna is the enjoyer. Krishna is the center. So even to be self-centered is a type of psychological atheism in which in my mind I take the place of God. Or in the act of trying to enjoy, because, I used to give this example. Imagine like I'm dating myself because nowadays there's very little decency left. So those of you who were alive back then or have seen movies about the 50s or 60s, imagine, some guy's going on a date. He comes to the girl's house. They sit down together on the couch, and suddenly the father walks in, turns the lights on, and says, "Hi, you young people don't mind me. I'm just going to sit here and read my book." So, game over. So when the lights go on, you can't do nonsense. I mean, why typically do thieves operate at night? Let me think real hard. Maybe because it's dark? So actually, the psychological precondition to engage in sense gratification or sinful activity is turn the lights out, which means forget Krishna, because you cannot really get into the mood of enjoying sex or this or that or just vanity. You can't really get in the mood unless you turn the lights off. And to turn the lights off means you banish Krishna from your mind, and at least for that time that I'm engaged in sense gratification, I'm living in a psychological world in which I'm the enjoyer and I'm the center. And so, anyway, Krishna says, as you approach me. So, if it's so easy to surrender to Krishna, why not just do it? If you get eternal life, full knowledge, bliss, why not just do it? Because you have to let go of something to grab onto something else. And people aren't willing to let go. They'd rather be a big fish in a little pond. I'll tell one story. I really want to get back to the specific thing. There's just so much to say, but the clock is ticking. I'll tell this one little story. This is a true story, actually, and then I'll get back to this verse here. This is all about the verse, but there was a place called Fort Mims. Fort Mims. I think actually it was in the sort of the far western Florida panhandle. And during the Great War against the Creek Nation, I was talking about that last night, there was this Andrew Jackson had to lead the U.S. troops because the Creek Nation had declared war, and it's a whole thing where the young warriors murdered all the elders of this Indian nation, which stretched actually from Canada all the way down to practically New Orleans. And so they first attacked Fort Mims, which was like this country club fort. It was like way down near the Gulf Coast, always kind of hot and muggy, and nothing ever happened there. And basically the main job of the soldiers was to just sit around and go on picnics on the riverbank with their girlfriends and wives. And so the scouts came and said that the Creek Indians are coming, and they're coming for war. And they didn't believe it. They thought, come on, And then they got another message. Okay, they're coming in 1 day. They're coming in half a day. They're coming in 4 hours. They're coming in 1 hour. And they just, as astonishing as this sounds, they didn't take it seriously. And when this Creek army finally arrived, to kill them, they had not even closed the gates of the fort. With days' warning, they hadn't even closed the gates. And the Indians, of course, just rode in and killed them all. And one young man actually dove into the river and escaped and told the whole story. So, but is that more astonishing than people thinking they won't die? Everyone knows we have to die, and yet people, they just, they don't care. They're just waiting for, how can I enjoy? What can I do next? So, as we approach Krishna, he shares himself with us, literally. Bhajamiham. Because whatever Krishna awards us is his energy. Even if Krishna gives you a material boon, as he says in the Gita, Mayaiva bhitani tan, whatever material thing we're enjoying is also given by Krishna. So he shares himself with us in that way. Anyway, so here, Putana, the demoness, of course, got liberation, but she was a very special person. The reason these kinds of stories in the Bhagavatam, among many reasons, are the Bhagavatam really goes out of its way to make a certain point to the reader over and over and over again. And Krishna makes the same point in the Gita. And that is, do not be, how should I put it, do not misunderstand the fact that Krishna appears to be partisan. That, for example, Krishna takes the side of the Pandavas against the Kurus, or Krishna takes the side of the Devas, the demigods, against the demons. And so it's the nature of politics that as soon as there's a political issue, people get passionate, they get angry, they argue. Even, let's say, some people may be devotees. Jai Prabhu, would you like some more prasadam? Thank you. Would you like some of this? Here, let me give you this flower garland. But bring up politics, and they'll be at each other's necks. And so it's just the nature, politics is very passionate, and it really brings out this fighting nature in people. And so naturally, when you see Krishna politically engaged, Krishna comes down, he says, Dharma Sangstapanartaya, that Paritranaya Sadhunam, to save the good people, and Vinashaya Cha Duskritam, to red card the demons, to destroy or remove the bad guys. But the bad guys, like 5,000 years ago, they'd taken over the world. They were politically and militarily ruling the world. And so Krishna, after his pastimes in Vrindavan, actually even in Vrindavan, because killing someone can be interpreted as a political act, especially when the person you kill is an agent of a king. So Putana was a political assassin sent by a political leader. So killing Putana and killing the other medley of asuras that all came to Vrindavan, that was a political statement. And eventually, of course, Krishna went to Vrindavan and personally killed Kamsa. And then after that, of course, then Kamsa's father-in-law, Jarasandha, attacked, and Krishna sort of killed him eventually through an agent, Bhima. So Krishna is, and in the Bhagavatam, so many times, like Krishna will take the side of Indra. When the Bhagavatam emphasizes that when the demons and the demigods churned the milk ocean and produced nectar and all kinds of other prizes, that the demons and demigods both worked equally hard at the same task, and yet the demigods won it all. It's like it was a winner-take-all situation. So is Krishna partial? And this question, we may think it's obvious he's not, but you have to understand that the world is filled. If you look at the ancient world, the so-called pagan world, Persian Empire, the Greco-Roman civilization, or anywhere in the world, whether it's Japan or Polynesia, people here in the Americas, the Aztecs, people had this dualistic worldview. They actually believed that there are two competing camps in the world. There's no absolute truth. Prabhupada alludes to this actually in the introduction to the Bhagavatam, where he says that there's a gulf of difference between the conception of God and absolute truth. So they really believe that there's just two different teams fighting each other. And God takes a side of one group, or that group takes God's side. It's just two competing groups. In fact, in the Bible actually accepts that there's many gods. The Old Testament, later they changed that in later times, because the first commandment is, you shall have no other gods before me. And as scholars all point out, the first commandment doesn't say there are no other gods. It simply says, get them in the right order. And there are actually other passages in the Old Testament that acknowledge there are other gods, but you have to worship Yahweh. So, and you have these wars. You have these wars where, let's say, even in the Old Testament, where to show that the God of the Israelites is stronger than the God of the Philistines or the worshipers of Baal, they have a battle, and whoever wins, it shows that my God can beat up your God. And so in the ancient world, people were often openly partisan and saw their God as openly partisan. They're just different teams. We're on the Zeus team, or you're on the Apollo team, or whatever. And so in that atmosphere, because Krishna appears in this world at a time when this type of partisan theology is going on. So the Bhagavatam wants to make clear Krishna is not one of these partisan gods. He's actually equal to everyone. He's the absolute truth. And Krishna emphasizes that himself. He loves everyone equally. Suhridak sarva bhutanam, Krishna says in the Gita. Suhrit literally means good-hearted, good heart. Prabhupada translates well-wishing friend. We still have this word actually in English. I mean, the pieces of it. Hrit is just heart. Same word. Hrit, heart, same word. And su, we have in English through the Greek as you, as in euphemism or euphony, which means something good. Eugenics, you means good from Sanskrit su. So Krishna says, I have a good heart. I'm a kind-hearted friend to every living being. Therefore, in his pastimes, unlike, frankly, so many other religious traditions where, for example, God just burned someone forever. Can you imagine eternal torture of your own children for sometimes somewhat subtle theological mistakes? Well, that's the glory of God, that he can burn you forever, like the burning bush that didn't consume itself. So, in other traditions, like so many religious traditions, ancient times, the enemies of God or the enemies of their God, are simply tortured or killed, and that's the end of the story, man. You're a loser, you're bad, you bet on the wrong horse, now burn, baby, burn. And so, but the Bhagavatam, the Vaishnava culture is so far above that. So Shishupala, liberated. Kangsi, liberated. Anyone that Krishna kills is liberated. So Krishna, because he's the loving Father, he doesn't torture people forever. He liberates them. He liberates them. So this is a very important theological point that stories like this are trying to bring out. That Krishna is equal to everyone. He loves everyone. He ultimately liberates everyone. And then finally, last point I wanted to make in the short time remaining to me before people start to realize that philosophy is nice, but Prasadam is also Krishna. That the gopis are so dear to Krishna, frankly, not because they took some, as they're offered now, some little, ecstatic course in rasa theology or something, or Raganuga Bhakti. The gopis were simple cowherd girls. They simply loved Krishna more than anything. And to follow the gopis. A devotee once wrote to Prabhupada. I remember because Prabhupada's answer came to L.A., and I read it. A devotee wrote to Prabhupada and said that Radharani is always trying to bring people to Krishna. She's always trying to bring others to Krishna. So when we go out on Sankirtan and try to bring people to Krishna, is that following in the mood of the gopis? And Prabhupada said, yes. So anyone that goes out to preach knows the ecstasy that you experience when you're actually talking about Krishna, the realizations you get, the spiritual emotions, that your greatest realizations come not when you're taking some so-called course in Madhurya Rasa or something, but your greatest ecstasies come when you're actually doing what Prabhupada wanted you to do and going out to preach. Someone wrote a book saying that if you just stay in Vrindavan and chant, you'll save the world. So my question is, if that's true, why did Prabhupada leave Vrindavan to save us? So this is what Krishna wants. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita twice, I'm the father of this world and the mother. It's not only, patri et filio, father and son. It's also Mataji. So Krishna says, I am the father and the mother. He says, of course, the verse Prabhupada used to like to quote that, ahang bija pradak pita, I'm the seed-giving father. Elsewhere, Krishna says, pitahamasya jagato, I am the father of this world. Mata, and the mother. Data, the creator. Pitamaha, the grandfather. In the 11th chapter, Arjuna says to Krishna, Pitasi lokasya characharasya, you are the father of this world, of all beings. So, the fallen souls are all Krishna's children. So if someone, as Prabhupada used to explain, if you go out and save the lost children of a man or a woman and bring them back to the parents, there's nothing that you could possibly do that would make you more dear to the parents. And that's why Krishna says at the end of the Gita, Jayimang paramang guyam mad bhakte shabi dasiti, using the future tense, one who will teach this supreme confidential knowledge among the devoted to me. And frankly, as Prabhupada said, I was walking with Prabhupada in Rancho Park one time, and there was this fun, because, we were all young and kind of, young males who we now know that their brains are not fully formed. But we were very sincere. So there was this thing where on Prabhupada's walks all around the world, devotees would try to bring Prabhupada the most shocking, horrible news of the latest deprivation of Kali Yuga. Somehow, they're just like, Prabhupada, I just heard that in this country, the priests were eating people's children or something. That wasn't a real story, but they would really try to bring the most shocking, depraved story they could find. And so, one brahmachari, we were walking with Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, we used to be selling him passion, Prabhupada, because he was doing sanctity, the Americans are so demonic, and they're this and they're that. And actually, Prabhupada stopped him, and he said, no. He said, they're not. They're actually nice people. They're just ignorant. You have to educate them. And so there are actually so many people out there who are good-hearted people. There really are. Prabhupada said they're waiting for the Sankirtan party to pick them up. So because as we know, one who goes out to preach in Prabhupada's mission is most dear to Krishna, because there are so many people who are devoted to God in their own way. They simply need this information. And then Krishna says, Yaidang Bhakti Mai Parang Kritva. Whoever will teach Bhagavad Gita to the sincere, they perform the greatest devotional service to me. If you want to get on Krishna's A-list, if you want to be dear to Krishna, if that's actually what you want in life, it's like if everything else fails, read the directions. Krishna is explaining right there in Bhagavad Gita, one who goes out to preach is most dear to me. And ma me vaishati, without doubt that person will come to me. Then Krishna says, nacha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritama. Literally, nobody else, nobody but this person is the most dear to me. No one but this person is, and bhavita nachame bhuyak anya pritra, and no one will ever be more dear to me than this person. So, each one has our own, every one of you is born with some special talent. Many of us share the universal devotee talent of overeating, but apart from that universal ability, we all have our specific talent. Actually, Paul says this in a letter in the New Testament, and the word in sort of New Testament Greek that's used for the special gift you have to serve God is charisma. That's actually the Greek word charisma. That's what it originally meant. So each one of us has our charisma. Each one of us has our special ability. And there's nothing more miserable than trying to make yourself happy. And the easiest way to stop suffering is stop trying to enjoy. And as soon as we try to make Krishna happy, water the root of the tree, we become happy. If you are unhappy, if you're in anxiety, if you are not deeply satisfied with your life, stop trying to be happy and start trying to make Krishna happy. If you're unhappy and therefore you try to make yourself happy, you are being totally faked out by Maya. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember Chick Herman before you came to L.A.? Announcer for the Lakers. He had one like signature saying. Someone really got faked out. He'd say, "Faked him into the popcorn machine," because at the side of the court they have some guy with a popcorn machine. So if I'm unhappy and I try to pursue my own pleasure, I was just faked into the popcorn machine. Because if we're unhappy, just stop, time out in the field, and say, how can I make Krishna happy? How can I make other people happy by bringing them to Krishna? And as soon as you start thinking that way, you'll be happy. As I say that a little person cannot have a big problem. It's like if you make a little mark on a deflated balloon, when you blow up the balloon, that little point gets very big. So if you think you have a big problem, it's because you think you're a big person. And if I recognize that, no, I'm a little person. I mean, I'm working on that. As an ISKCON guru, I'm working on it. But if I actually understand that I'm a little person, then I can only have little problems. Little people can only have little problems. And the real problem is that the world is going to hell in a non-devotee handbasket. So if you want to be happy, make Krishna happy. Water the root of the tree. Stop trying to water the leaves and twigs of my innumerable desires. And give what's most dear to you. Don't give your... did you collect baseball cards? I was a serious baseball card collector.